Kunigami Rensuke has always been an interesting character to me. Firstly, in the beginning, he called himself a superhero, which I thought was super cool. I did find it a bit annoying when he was going on about fairness in Blue Lock. However, it didn't bother me too much. But seeing his love for First Team Z and then his respect and kind of guidance for Ryo, who he didn't even really know, it was very touching. As even though obviously Kunigami wanted to go as far as he could in Blue Lock, it still felt as he tried to make it with everyone. Which, yeah, doesn't fit the story really. However, it was really touching. Then after the U20 match in the beginning of the Neo Egoist League, I found him even more interesting with him becoming, I'm not gonna lie, but really emo and edgy. But I really liked that, as it was such a 180 spin from his original personality, and I was so hyped to see how much he had improved, his new personality, and just what he was like. But now around 160 chapters after his reintroduction, I must say that I'm not such a fan of him, and in this video, I want to break down why I feel this way, and why I still think that his reintroducing was a good plot twist to the story, but in my opinion could have been executed better. So let's start by going over what happened to him. So Kunigami entered into the wild card, where we don't know too much about what truly happened there. However, what we know is that the losers from the second selection had the option to go there, and that the goal with the wild card was to create a striker similar to Noel Noah. What happened in there is still a mystery. However, we saw him looking absolutely destroyed after walking out of it. So it's clear to say that it wasn't anything easy. Now my prediction is that in the wildcard, he faced all of his old Team Z buddies, but had to in some way destroy them in order to advance. And for someone who called himself a hero, who did everything for everyone to then go and destroy the very people he had spent a lot of time with, yeah, I can really imagine how much that must have done to him. But that's purely the psychological side of the wildcard, as the physical also must have been extremely tough, as he was forced to learn to be ambidextrous to survive, and most likely was put through hell. Now that it's established, let's go over his reintroduction, which was super cool. Isagi had just gotten to meet with his idol, Noel Noah, and if that wasn't good enough, then they end the chapter with Kunigami walking through a door and looking outright miserable. This obviously made Isagi super happy, but then he tried to talk to Kunigami. He could tell right away how the once friendly and smiling Kunigami had changed into a much more depressed and sad version of him. But personally, that just made me so much more hyped, as they had done a 180 with his whole character. And now he is basically a villain instead of a hero. But that's far from everything, as they decided to hype him up even more. In the starting training with Bastard Munchen in chapter 157, he came in third place out of everyone, only coming second to both Ness and Kaiser. And yes, this training was very focused on purely physical and stamina. And Kunigami has always been someone who is really physical and in shape. But to right away come in the third spot is wild, as he beat the other regulars for Bastard Munchen and Yukimiya, who was the highest one out of Blue Lock, since, well, Kaiser didn't allow Isagi to clear it. However, Yukimiya came in 13th place, so it's a lot different. Anyway, now let's get into the first match, which is the FC Bartra match. Now here they included him great at the start. He got the ball from a Bastard Munchen player, and he had a ready Kaiser on his side who was just waiting for his pass. But Kunigami didn't care about it as he took the shot on his own. Even Isagi pointed out that instead of passing, he trapped it with his chest and forcibly kept the ball, thinking that up until now this super egoistic play would have been unthinkable for Kunigami. Now did Kunigami end up missing the goal? Well, yes. However, just him showing off this incredibly new, egoistic side of himself from what we had been used to was amazing, as we truly understood how much he had changed and actually evolved more into the whole philosophy of Blue Lock. Now in the end, he did get subbed out of the team due to him firstly getting ignored by the whole team after he ignored Kaiser, and as Kunigami didn't have a response to that, Noah subbed him out as he had failed to integrate well into the team, as in their team, there are only two options, either attack with Kaiser or show that his abilities surpass him, which Kunigami was unable to do either of. In the end, he did manage to get his own goal though, as he changed with Noah when the star change system was over, and alongside Isagi they scored, as Isagi had to swallow all of his pride to pass to Kunigami, so that he could prove his worth. Also, I'm not gonna lie, but his and Isagi's conversation afterwards was super cool, where Kunigami asked him why he passed him, but Isagi told him that he didn't do it for him, and Kunigami then said that he had fallen this much as a striker. Just reading that line gives me chills, as he really cooked. Anyway, moving on to the Manshine game, and this is where he is really starting to lose his touch, which might be weird to say, as he did score one goal. However, let's be honest, that was all crumbs from Isagi's efforts, but still, I give him so credit as he scored at the end of the day. But that's also the thing. Fine, he did score a goal, but after that he completely disappeared. We saw him here and there and he talked with Chigiri for a quick second, but then he turned into dust. It was like Bastard Munchen was 10 players instead of 11. Okay, maybe not that far, but you get my point. And now that all continued into both the Ubers game, but also the PXG game. In the PXG game, He had his back and forth with Shido, and we gotta give him some credit as he kind of shut him down after Shido scored. Not to mention that he did have his kind of cool header which helped Isagi score. And I know that a player doesn't have to score to be considered important. However, it really felt as if Kunigami's presence should have been shown more. I mean, we had to wait 2 whole arcs just to see him again. And in the beginning, he was great. However, as the team became more Isagi focused, it felt like he slowly got forgotten, which is just such a shame. As in the beginning, I was jumping up and down in my seat just by seeing him. His whole character had been switched upside down, and now he wasn't the hero anymore but the villain, and he had become so different. Now I guess that we arrive where the main focus of the video lies, which is me talking about how I think that his reintroduction could have been done a lot better, and that's by not being in the same team as Isagi. Now I know how that sounds, as his thing is to be like Noel Noah, so of course he should have gone to Bastard Munchen, like that's no question at all, and from that standpoint, it all makes perfect sense. However, there were just too many players in the Bastard Munchen team, both from the Bastard Munchen side and also the Blue Lock side, so it was easy for him to become overshadowed. Now let's go over the other teams and see which one he would fit in. Now I'm not talking about which team he would fit the best in based on their playstyle. Yeah, I know that sounds weird that I'm not doing it that way. However, the team that I think he would have fit the best in is munchen. However, with them having Nagi, Ryo, and Chigiri, then it would just have been the same story as now, as he wouldn't have gotten the time to shine. Next up is France, which is once again the same stuff. With them having Rin and Shido as the strikers, he would have no chance to play in the striker position. And even if we look below him, then I guess that he could have taken the position of either Nanase, Tokimitsu, or Zantetsu. However, with Shido already being in the PXG team, I don't see him playing that well in that team. Moving on to Ubers, where there's just no way. In that team, Baru has to be the only striker, as their gameplay doesn't work as efficiently otherwise. So he can't go there either, which means that there's only one team left. Now in my opinion, Kunigami goes against all that the FC Barca and Spain team stands for with their carefree and fun playstyle. But this is the only team I could realistically see him getting his chance to shine. Bachira obviously have to be the main star, as Bachira is just Bachira. I mean, nothing more to explain. However, Kunigami could still easily had a big impact. And I also think that him just going against Isagi instead of playing with him would work so much better. Firstly, the shock factor that Kunigami had changed so much would have had a much bigger impact if they were thrown into a game against each other, and Isagi needed to understand this new side of Kunigami. However, there is more, as I think that the main problem was just that we saw so much of Kunigami, but at the same time, so little. Like, we saw him in every game, but his performance was very mediocre. However, it wouldn't be the same if he was playing for another team like FC Barca, for example, as we would instead just see him, obviously in the game between Bastard Munchen and FC Barca. However, after that, we wouldn't see him that much, and giving him the chance to have that mystery around his character would help him keep the excitement a lot more, and would keep us hooked at his character, instead of us seeing him all the time but having a mid-performance. Also, having him in FC Barca would work for more reasons, as instead of having him go against Chigiri in the second game, he would have instead gone against him in the last game, where we saw the flashback between FC Barca and Munchen City. And there they could have their own moment and go against each other. That would make the impact off that game a lot bigger as well, which would only work in our favor. And then, with the mystery surrounding him, and all of the excitement that would all go into the U20 World Cup, and he would continue to be a pretty dope character. As for me, at least now I don't really care for him. Fine, it would be cool for him to be subbed in and play. However, I would much rather see more of like Zantetsu or Kiora, who are characters that excite me a lot more than what Kunigami does right now. However, that might just be me, so let me know down in the comments if you agree, or if you actually love this new version of Kunigami. Also, let me know what changes you would do to fix his character.